It's not just Brussels versus Budapest. It's, actually a majority of Europe versus Budapest. And that Orban and his regime is very much isolated on this.
In a landmark legal action, 15 members of the European Union have taken the extraordinary step of collectively suing the government of Viktor Orban. This historic move highlights not only the rift between Brussels and Budapest, but also emphasizes that numerous other European capitals have joined forces in opposing the Hungarian government's policies. Welcome to Euractiv's Beyond the Byline podcast. I am Evi Chiori and I'm joined by Remy Boni, Executive Director at Forbidden Colours, an LGBTQI+ organization monitoring and advocating against the anti-LGBTQI+ movements in the European Union. Thank you for joining me, Remy, today. We will be talking about the biggest lawsuit in the history of the European Union against Hungary. So already in 2022, the European Commission referred Hungary to the Court of Justice of the EU over the child protection law, a law that has been criticized by human rights groups and international watchdogs as being discriminatory against LGBTQI+ people and was described as a disgrace by the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Now, the EU executive contends that the bill violates a series of EU single market laws and that the provisions of this law also violate human dignity, freedom of expression and information. But what exactly is the child protection law?
It's basically a law that bans any kind of promotion or depiction of LGBTQ+ people and rights in places where children could be. It is actually a copy-paste of a law that has been introduced in 2013 in Russia as well. So we very clearly see which playbook Orban has been using in this. To be very practical about it, what does the law ban? For instance, to talk about LGBTQ+ rights in schools. It also bans, for instance, to sell books containing LGBTQ+ content and a radius of 200 meters from schools and churches, which in practice in a city like Budapest means everywhere. It bans to distribute LGBTQ+ content on in the audiovisual media, on television and radio between before 10 o'clock in the evening, basically. So this is kind of the censorship that Orban is trying to introduce with his law, basically. Obviously this is breaching upon not only EU law, but also upon EU norms and values. And so that's why with the introduction of this law in 2021 already, we have been pushing the European Commission to start infringement proceedings against the law. And then the procedure started with the European Commission, and really in 2022, in the summer of 2022, the Commission announced during a press conference here in Brussels that they would take the Hungarian government to court.
And you personally and the Forbidden Colours organization played a critical role when it comes to making public the Hungarian government's intentions to impose this law. What were the steps followed and how did you build the case?
So basically, we were the organization in 2021 who announced the news about Orban introducing all of this. So we have indeed been building the case since then. Putting a lot of pressure on member states in 2021. Maybe you remember that the European Council of June 2021 was a very emotional one. There was a lot of comments about this anti-LGBTQ law by Orban. At some point, Mark Rutte, the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, even sensed that if Orban is continue with this kind of legislation, Hungary is basically putting themselves outside the Union. So this was kind of the rhetoric, and we've been trying to isolate Orban a lot on all of this. So basically, when then the Commission last year announced that they would start a lawsuit basically in Luxembourg against Hungary, we together with our colleagues here in Brussels, but also in Hungary, we started to campaign other member states as well to basically convince them to join the proceedings and to support the European Commission and at the Luxembourg courts, because we really also wanted to show that this was breaking Orban's narrative as well, that it's not just Brussels versus Budapest, as Orban in every single case for the last decade basically has been saying on LGBTQ rights, but also on the rule of law issues and other democratic issues. So we wanted to show that it's not just Brussels versus Budapest, that it's actually a majority of Europe versus Budapest, and that Orban and his regime is very much isolated on this.
So now fast forward, 15 countries, Belgium, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Portugal, Denmark, Austria, Malta, Spain, Ireland, Slovenia, Greece, France and Germany have joined this lawsuit, blaming Hungary that is breaching EU laws and violates human rights.
For them, it's, for instance, the first time ever that they joined a court case against another member state. And it's not just only the small countries where this is the first time. We actually were able to write a little bit of French legal history as well, because France also never joined a court case ever against another member state. It's very much a first time for a lot of countries to do such a thing, and we're very happy that this happens now on LGBTIQ plus rights, because it also very much shows that actually LGBTIQ plus rights do belong to these core norms and values of the European Union.
And these countries were followed by Sweden and Finland in a surprising move from their part because of their bids to join NATO and their negotiations with Hungary to support their candidate status, causing in this way the immediate reaction of the Hungarian government.
Which is also very, very particular, because as your listeners also know, the debate between Hungary and Sweden and Finland has been very hard, especially because Finland and Sweden both want to become member of NATO. Basically, we know that Orban has been using this case as a bargaining chip with Sweden and Finland to become to basically give them to do the accession vote at the Hungarian parliament. Now Finland basically got the accession to NATO. And on the day of the accession, of the official accession of NATO, also Finland announced that they would join the case. In the case of Sweden was like, yeah, it doesn't look very, very good for our future within NATO with Hungary anyway, so we're joining the case also.
As a response to Finland's move to join this lawsuit, the Hungarian Secretary of State, Tamás Menzer, escalated the existing tension between the two parts by saying that our Finnish friends still have a lot to learn about integrity. Begging, he said, until you get what you want and then immediately turning your back, that's not what decent people do, and this isn't a reflection on us but on them. Harsh words here, I would say. On the other hand, regarding Sweden, who is still waiting to join NATO, Secretary Menzer mentioned that Hungary still expects Sweden to make some reassuring moves about its desire to cooperate with Hungary based on mutual respect within the Allied system. So it will be interesting to see how the ongoing discussions about supporting or not Sweden's NATO bid will evolve in the future. But Remy, what makes this move from the EU Parliament and these 15 countries so important?
Well, first of all, it is important to show indeed that LGBTIQ plus rights are part of the European norms and values. But second of all, it is very much important to break Viktor Orbán's narrative, to break the narrative of Brussels versus Budapest or Budapest versus Brussels. We show now that 15 capitals of the European Union say enough to Viktor Orbán and say, look, but your introduction of these anti-LGBTQ laws and this basically copy-pasting of Kremlin legislation, we say enough to you, and we are going to take you to court and take action against all of this. Not just to attack Hungary, but because actually the member states are doing this to save Hungary, to save Hungarian LGBTIQ plus people, and to save Hungarian children that are now today denied of basic sex education and so on.
And now what? We have this lawsuit. This is a lengthy process that demands lots of work and pressure from the institutions. So what are the next steps required, and what can we expect?
So the next step is basically in the coming 2 months, member states are going to provide their written observations. So basically they are going to announce in writing which arguments of the European Commission that they do support. Then most probably at the end of the year, the court will start oral hearings. So there again, the member states will be able to express their support and to provide their arguments against Hungary. And we do expect a ruling somewhere in the first half of next year, which might be interesting because, as you know, the presidencies of the European Council that are coming. Well, the first half of next year is going to be Belgium, but then there is going to be a change of presidency, and it might be Hungary. So it's always going to depend on when the court is going to rule. But let's see. It's the moment we have been talking with EU law professors from all over Europe, and they're very much enthusiastic about the case, because it's in a lot of senses a very first case on everything, and the amount of member states joining, also the European Parliament joining, but also, for instance, it's the first time that the European Commission is taking a member state to court and on the basis of Article 2 of the Treaty of the European Union.
The Article 2 of the Treaty of the European Union mentions that the Union is founded on values of respect of human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, and respect of human rights, including the rights of persons belonging to minorities. These values are common to the member states in a society in which pluralism, non-discrimination, tolerance, justice, solidarity, and equality between women and men prevail.
I think it's important that we have now shown that indeed LGBTIQ plus rights belong to the core norms and values of the European Union, and that we do call for all your listeners as well to join our cases, and they can subscribe to our newsletter on forbidden-collars.com and so on, and follow our social media, and we'll be very happy to be in touch with them.
Thank you very much. I am Viktor, and this was Euractiv's Beyond the Byline podcast. Visit Euractiv for the latest news and listen to our tech podcast, agri-food podcast, and health podcast. And if you haven't subscribed to the Beyond the Byline, you can do so on your favorite podcasting app. If you have any comments or ideas, you can drop a line at podcast@euractiv.com. This episode was produced by myself, and I want to thank our executive producer, Malte Kettelsen. Thank you for listening, and until next week.